They say a pivotal moment can cleave your existence into distinct periods, a stark rupture like the earth cracking open. I never really subscribed to that sort of theatrical exaggeration. My experience of life felt more like a slow, steady attrition, a gradual wearing away of boundaries until circumstances simply shifted, a transformation that culminated on our 12th wedding anniversary dinner. 12 years, Dana and I. We were at La Mer Rouge, the very same establishment where I'd once fumbled with a ring box, my heart pounding against my ribs like a captive bird. I had secured the reservation weeks in advance. The ambiance was set, candlelight casting a warm glow, pristine white tablecloths, the delicate chime of cutlery against fine china, and a gentle jazz melody softly emanating from hidden speakers. She had always adored that place, or at least that's what she used to profess. Her name is Dana. For the better part of those 12 years, I would have wagered my life that she loved me. Not merely loved me, but actively chose me with each passing day. Tonight, I wore the cerulean button-down shirt she had once casually touched, remarking it was her favorite. It was a fleeting comment made years ago, yet it had remained etched in my memory. Dana was adorned in a black satin gown, elegantly understated yet undeniably striking. It was the sort of attire that commanded attention, drawing gazes as we entered, a soft hum of admiration following us to our secluded corner table. Everything felt pleasant, comfortable, perhaps a touch detached, a subtle coolness I had attributed to the natural progression of a long-term partnership. Couples navigate various phases, don't they? That's what the articles often suggest. She offered me a smile across the table, the candlelight catching the sparkle in her eyes. Reaching out, her fingers, cool to the touch, brushed against mine. "Still looking rather dashing for a fellow approaching 40, Jack?" she inquired, a familiar hint of playful sarcasm softening the compliment. I let out a genuine laugh, a wave of relief washing over me. Perhaps the perceived distance was merely a figment of my imagination. Dinner was exquisite. Steak, cooked medium rare for me, and halibut for you. We enjoyed a bottle of decent Cabernet Sauvignon, one we both fancy. We discussed our professional endeavors, plans for a potential getaway next spring, and the neighbor's incessant yapping dog. All in all, it felt stable, reassuring. Then, just before dessert was served, I did something spontaneous, something fueled by hope. "I'll be right back," I announced, rising from my seat. I leaned in and planted a kiss on her cheek. Her skin felt smooth, carrying a subtle aroma of vanilla mingled with a floral fragrance. "I'm just going to settle the bill." I had prearranged this with the waiter earlier, a small gesture. Tucked inside the billfold, I had placed a simple, handwritten note. "Here's to many more, D. Love, J." Perhaps a bit sentimental, but I had envisioned it bringing a genuine, uninhibited smile to her face, the kind I hadn't witnessed as frequently of late. How I wish I had simply remained seated. My goodness, how I wish I had never left that table. Returning from the restroom, the bill settled. I slowed my pace as I neared the high-backed booth situated just behind ours. Our waiter was occupied with another table, so I paused, feigning an adjustment of my cufflink, waiting for him to move on so I could discreetly rejoin my seat without causing a stir. That's when I overheard it. Her laugh, my wife's laugh, but not the soft, restrained giggle she typically shared with me. This was different, more robust, unrestrained, rippling with an effortless intimacy that felt both foreign and undeniably, dangerously flirtatious. Then, words drifted over the polished wooden divider, like a plume of toxic gas. You know, if he ever figured it out, I suspect he'd simply depart without a fuss. He's not the confrontational type, truly. He'd likely just pack a bag and vanish. Make it effortless. Silence ensued. A brief interlude filled only by the distant hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. Then, more laughter. Not solely hers this time. A man's laugh. Deep, confident, and sickeningly recognizable. A voice I knew. "That's what makes it convenient, darling," the male voice drawled, dripping with condescension. "You married a lapdog, not a predator." Lapdog. The word struck me like a physical blow. My breath hitched, the air grew heavy, constricting me. My ears roared, a desperate attempt to drown out the sound. My mind raced, desperately trying to twist the words into some other interpretation, some misunderstanding, a jest about a colleague. Anything but this. Anything but me. But then Dana spoke again. Her tone was casual, light, as if she were merely requesting another glass of wine. "Well, this will be the final anniversary I'm obligated to pretend, at least." Something within me didn't merely break, it disintegrated, utterly and irrevocably, reduced to a fine powder. I didn't rush back to our table. I remained rooted to the spot, a statue of numbness. My reflection shimmered in the polished brass railing beside me, revealing a man suddenly hollowed out, his gaze fixed vacantly on the flickering candle adorning someone else's table. Time seemed to distort, stretching and compressing. Finally, I drew a deep, ragged breath, composed my features into a mask of placid normalcy, turned slowly, and retraced the remaining steps to our booth as if I had heard nothing whatsoever. Dana was in the process of sipping her wine when I resumed my seat. She lowered the glass, that disarming, practiced smile reappearing. "Everything all right?" she inquired, tilting her head slightly. "Perfect," I managed to utter. The word tasted like ashes in my mouth. Utterly perfect. I lied. I sat there and lied. I did not confront her. I did not inquire about the identity of the voice. I did not demand an explanation. I did not break down. I did not raise my voice. I did not allow a single tear to fall, not that evening. I watched her savor her crème brûlée, idly tapping the caramelized sugar crust with the back of her spoon. I observed her offer polite thanks to the server with practiced courtesy. I witnessed her retouching her lipstick in the small, ornate mirror near the exit, smoothing the black satin fabric of her dress. Throughout it all, a single question burned behind my eyes. Who was he? I replayed the voice, its confident timbre, the easy intimacy, the condescending undertone. It was not the voice of a stranger. That voice held history. My mind raced, sifting through a multitude of faces, friends, acquaintances, colleagues, even distant relatives. The possibilities felt both expansive and suffocating. That night, after she drifted off to sleep beside me, curled on her side, facing away, a familiar position that suddenly felt like a deliberate act of rejection, I did not sleep. I found myself in the guest bathroom, sitting on the cold tile floor for what felt like hours. 3, perhaps 4. The phone lay heavy in my hand, its screen dark. Did I truly wish to uncover the truth? Or had the overheard fragments already constituted a truth too agonizing to bear? By the time the first faint hint of dawn began to filter through the window, I had arrived at a decision. I would not merely seek to discover if. I would ascertain everything. Not through an outburst of drama, not through shouting matches, not through tearful confrontations, but with irrefutable evidence. Cold, hard, undeniable proof. And what I discovered, I suspected, would not simply alter my life. It would detonate it. The following morning was an exercise in chillingly effective pretense. Dana hummed a cheerful, oblivious tune in the kitchen, as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. She prepared coffee, toasted thick slices of sourdough bread, just the way I preferred it, and inquired if I desired any eggs. I looked at her, truly observed her, and perceived a stranger inhabiting my wife's familiar form, moving about my kitchen, utilizing my dishware. The disconnect was jarring, almost nauseating. "No, thank you," I replied, my voice carefully modulated to sound neutral. "Skipping breakfast? An early start? I might be a bit late this evening." I retrieved my briefcase and departed 20 minutes earlier than usual. I did not proceed directly to the office. Instead, I drove around the corner, parked beneath the shade of an ancient oak tree, and simply sat there. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles bone white. My pulse throbbed in my throat, a frantic drumbeat against the sudden, terrifying silence. It was no longer mere anger, it was something colder, sharper. I felt as though I were unraveling thread by thread, but not into a chaotic mess. Rather into something tightly wound, dangerously focused. I harbored no desire for retribution in the conventional sense, no shouting matches, no broken crockery. I sought clarity. I craved the complete, unvarnished truth of the betrayal. It was then that Kevin's name surfaced in my thoughts. Kevin Riley, a college friend, exceptionally sharp, now at the helm of a cybersecurity firm downtown. He always possessed a knack for the more clandestine aspects of technology, identifying vulnerabilities, tracing digital footprints. We hadn't conversed much recently, but he owed me a significant favor from years past. I retrieved my phone, my fingers surprisingly steady, and dialed his number. "Jack, it's been a while, man. Everything all right?" "Hey, Kev. Yeah, mostly. Listen, could you grab coffee later? I need to pick your brain about something related to personal security." "Sure," he replied, a note of curiosity coloring his voice. My treat, noon at the grind. We convened at the noisy, bustling coffee shop situated midway between our respective offices. I dispensed with pleasantries. I laid out the situation plainly and directly, keeping my voice low. "I suspect Dana is being unfaithful, Kev. I need solid proof, discreetly obtained." Kevin did not flinch, nor did he probe with awkward questions. He simply took a slow sip of his latte and nodded thoughtfully. "Okay," he stated, his gaze unwavering. "Are you looking for visual evidence, auditory surveillance, or digital traces?" "All of the above," I responded, meeting his gaze. "But strictly within legal boundaries, Kev. I have no intention of ending up in jail over this. I just need to know the truth, the whole truth." He offered a faint, understanding smile. "There are ways, Jack. Legal ways." That afternoon, I met him briefly in a parking garage and handed him one of our old, seldom-used tablets and a spare smartphone I had retained after my last upgrade. Kevin explained that he could install sophisticated, unobtrusive monitoring software. He would link the devices, enabling me to passively access copies of certain calls, text messages, location data, and even app usage. All of this would be routed through a secure server accessible remotely. No direct physical intrusion into her current devices would be necessary. Rather, it would involve clever software leveraging backup and synchronization protocols that she would likely overlook. I hesitated for a split second. This felt intrusive, a profound betrayal in itself, but then her words echoed in my mind. "This will be the final anniversary I'm obligated to pretend. You married a lapdog, not a predator." This was no longer about violating her privacy. It was about uncovering a truth she was actively and maliciously concealing. This was a matter of self-preservation. By the weekend, the necessary tools were in place. I altered neither my behavior nor my interactions towards her. I continued to be the attentive, albeit slightly detached husband she seemingly expected. But now I watched and listened, and the emerging picture began to resemble something from a cheaply produced spy thriller. Except it was my life. It commenced subtly. Encrypted messages were exchanged at unusual hours with a contact designated simply as M. Calendar entries for Pilates or client strategy session coincided with GPS pings indicating locations nowhere near a gym or office building, frequently leading to a nondescript hotel downtown, the Elmswood, on Thursday afternoons. Texts were deleted almost immediately after being read. Then came the crucial piece that solidified the entire puzzle. A forwarded email confirmation was accidentally synced to the cloud backup Kevin had accessed. Attached were receipts for 2 premium spa packages, encompassing massages and facials, at a luxurious lakeside resort I had never even heard of. The booking was made not to our joint account, but to her personal credit card, the one she used for incidental expenses. 2 names appeared on the booking confirmation: Dana Miller, and a second name, Mark Lindley. Mark Lindley. The name struck me with a physical jolt, drawing the air from my lungs. Mark Lindley, my former supervisor. The individual under whom I had labored for 4 intense years. The man I had helped navigate a messy, acrimonious divorce. The man whose woes I had listened to over countless beers. He had attended our barbecues. He had sat at my dinner table, complimented Dana's cooking, laughed at my jokes. His voice, that confident, familiar, condescending laugh I had heard emanating from behind the booth divider. It was him. Of course, it was him. The pieces clicked into place with a sickening clarity. That evening, I sat on the edge of our bed, observing Dana engrossed in her phone, a faint smirk playing on her lips as she read something. The urge to snatch the device, to smash it against the wall, was visceral. But I restrained myself. I remained perfectly still. I would not react impulsively. I would prepare. So I began methodically, clinically, to construct my case. I created a new, heavily encrypted folder deep within a cloud storage account, assigning it an innocuous name: Tax Prep, or 2021 Archive. Within it, I started meticulously saving everything: screenshots of incriminating texts, time-stamped GPS data logs, copies of email correspondences, and call records detailing frequent, lengthy conversations with M. Mark. However, digital evidence alone was insufficient. I required visual confirmation. I needed irrefutable proof. I contacted Kevin again. He assisted me in sourcing 2 minuscule, high-definition pinhole cameras. One, disguised as a tiny air freshener clip, was affixed to the rearview mirror mount in Dana's car, angled precisely to capture the driver and passenger seats. The other, even smaller, was subtly integrated into the underside of the vanity shelf in our master bathroom, a space she frequently retreated to for phone calls while preparing herself, citing superior reception. The installation was an exercise in nerve-wracking precision, executed during a narrow window when I knew she would be occupied for several hours at a supposed book club meeting. Reviewing the feeds later, observing the clear, wide-angle views, I experienced a chilling dichotomy of vindication and self-reproach. I barely recognized the person I was becoming: methodical, cold, calculating, almost dangerously detached. The most arduous aspect was the waiting, the feigning, the constant gnawing awareness of the truth simmering just beneath the placid surface of our lives. And then, one evening, Approximately 3 weeks into my silent surveillance, Dana returned home exhibiting a noticeable transformation. Her smile seemed broader, brighter, almost incandescent. She was humming along to the radio, deposited her keys on the counter with a cheerful clatter, and practically skipped upstairs. Before proceeding to the shower, she leaned in and bestowed upon me a brief, almost perfunctory kiss on the cheek. It felt like an afterthought. Later that night, while the sound of the shower muffled the world upstairs, her phone, left charging on the kitchen counter, illuminated. A new message notification from M appeared. I did not touch it. I did not need to. The monitoring software logged it instantaneously. Mark, same hotel next Tuesday, 11:30. I'll bring the wine this time. You bring that black dress I like. Unless hubby finally caught on, lol. My blood ran cold. That black dress, the anniversary dress. The sheer magnitude of the disrespect, the brazen audacity, was staggering. 3 minutes later, while the shower still ran, a reply was dispatched. I observed it materialize on my secure feed. Dana, he's clueless, Mark. Always has been. Honestly, I could probably leave for a week, tell him it was a work conference, and he wouldn't even question it. See you Tuesday. Can't wait. Clueless. I did not weep. I did not shout. I did not pound the wall. I simply stared at the glowing screen of my laptop, committing every single word to memory, every casual betrayal, every dismissive assumption. She believed me to be clueless. She perceived me as a lapdog. She had absolutely no inkling that the predator was already circling, silent and patient, awaiting the opportune moment to strike. She was unaware that I was poised to incinerate her entire world, and perhaps my own along with it. The days leading up to that Tuesday crawled by, each second feeling akin to traversing broken glass barefoot. Silent, sharp, agonizing. I maintained the facade, offered smiles when expected, nodded during conversations, passed the salt at dinner. I slept beside her, or at least pretended to. The space between us in the bed felt like a vast, unbridgeable chasm. Internally, however, I wasn't merely hurting. I was rehearsing, meticulously planning every detail, every maneuver, every contingency for what I knew I had to do. Kevin, ever the steadfast friend, offered to handle the surveillance that Tuesday. "Look, Jack, you don't need to witness this yourself, man," he had said, his voice laced with genuine concern. "Let me follow her. Keep my distance. Get the shots you need. It'll be cleaner." But I declined. "No, Kev, I need to see it. I have to." It wasn't about masochism. It wasn't about needing further confirmation. I possessed mountains of that already. This was about confronting the reality head-on. This was no longer a matter of suspicion. It was a confirmed fact. If I did not witness the final act of betrayal with my own eyes, if I did not look it squarely in the face, I feared it would forever haunt me, a phantom lurking in the recesses of my mind. I needed to see the nail driven into the coffin of our marriage. Tuesday dawned bright and deceptively sunny, a perfect spring day. Dana departed the house precisely at 11:22 a.m. She was wearing the black satin dress, the anniversary gown. Her hair cascaded down, styled impeccably, her makeup flawless. She looked radiant. She kissed me goodbye on the cheek, a fleeting touch of lips against skin. "Client lunch, then that leadership seminar this afternoon," she chirped, grabbing her purse. "Might be a late one." "All right," I responded, my voice even. I handed her a travel mug of coffee I had prepared. "Drive safely." Discreetly nestled within the removable base of the mug was a tiny, new GPS tracker, smaller and more potent than the phone-based one. Insurance. She wouldn't notice. She never paid attention to the details. She consistently underestimated me. That was her fatal flaw. I waited precisely 15 minutes after her car had disappeared down the street. Then I walked out to the garage, not to my own vehicle, but to a nondescript gray sedan I had rented the previous day under a pseudonym and paid for in cash. In the passenger seat was a bag containing a high-resolution camera with a powerful zoom lens, binoculars, and a bottle of water. My hands were not trembling. My breathing was steady, measured. Perhaps the numbness had finally taken complete hold, or perhaps, just perhaps, I had finally transformed into the man she had inadvertently created, cold, focused, and stripped bare of any illusions. The tracker led me directly to the Elmswood Hotel, a 30-minute drive from our suburban neighborhood, situated within a somewhat unremarkable business district. Not overtly opulent nor disreputable, merely forgettable, anonymous, the kind of establishment that specialized in discretion, likely accepting cash at the front desk and posing no inquiries. Ideal for an illicit rendezvous. I parked across the street, partially concealed behind a parked florist delivery van. I observed as Dana pulled her Lexus into a space near the entrance. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, reapplied her lipstick, then stepped out, phone already in hand. A subtle, anticipatory smile gracing her lips. A smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months, perhaps years. She did not wait long. Less than 5 minutes later, Mark Lindley's sleek, dark gray Tesla Model S glided silently towards the hotel entrance. He didn't even bother parking properly, leaving it idling in the red zone designated for drop-offs. He emerged, dressed in expensive casual attire, dark jeans, a crisp blue blazer over a white t-shirt, designer sunglasses perched atop his head. He strode towards Dana with a smug, proprietary air. He leaned in and gave her a quick, firm kiss directly on the mouth. No hesitation, no furtive glances, just an assertion of entitlement. They laughed together, heads close like teenagers sneaking away from watchful eyes. I raised the camera, click, click, click. High resolution, time-stamped evidence. No questions, no doubts, no room for plausible deniability remaining. They entered the building arm in arm. Dana glanced back once, a fleeting, almost subconscious movement, perhaps out of habit, perhaps a flicker of paranoia. I ducked lower behind the van's side mirror, melting into the shadows. She did not see me, of course, she didn't. To her, in that moment, I was invisible. I was the clueless lapdog miles away, securely ensconced in the life she was actively betraying. They remained inside for 2 hours and 17 minutes. I timed it. I did not move from the rental car. I did not eat, nor did I drink. I did not check my phone. I simply sat there, the silence within the car pressing in, listening to the quiet hum of midday traffic, the occasional distant siren. I wondered how many times this scene had previously unfolded. How many client lunches, Pilates sessions, work dinners, and seminars had served as elaborate deceptions for these sordid, forgettable hotel room encounters. And the deepest wound, the one that bled more profoundly than the physical betrayal, was the sheer ease of it all. The way she laughed with him, the way her entire demeanor seemed lighter, more animated in his presence. She was transformed in his presence, exuding a newfound effervescence, a spirit of lightheartedness, and a palpable vitality. The Dana I observed alongside Mark Lindley seemed like a mere spectral echo of the woman I believed I had wed, resurrected for another man. Around 2:45 in the afternoon, they emerged from the hotel's entrance. Her hair bore a slight disarray. Her lipstick had completely vanished, yet she radiated an air of contentment, almost smugness. As she made her way toward her automobile, Mark extended his hand and delivered a familiar, proprietorial pat to her posterior. She neither recoiled nor protested. Instead, a low, throaty chuckle escaped her, and she instructed him to send her a message later, once the vicinity was clear. They then proceeded to their respective high-end vehicles and departed in opposite directions, melting back into their separate existences as if no clandestine encounter had just occurred. It was as though it were just another ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I made no move to pursue either of them. It was unnecessary. I possessed everything I required: the images indelibly imprinted on the camera's memory card, the geographical tracking data, the digital correspondence, the audio fragments captured during their private conversations. I held the unvarnished truth, in all its devastating and heartbreaking detail. That evening, Dana returned home at approximately 6:15 in the evening, bearing bags of takeout from a Thai establishment we both favored. Utterly worn out, she declared with a feigned yawn, dropping her keys onto the kitchen counter. That convention was absolutely grueling. I simply didn't have the energy to cook. I sat opposite her at the kitchen island, idly nudging my noodles around my plate. Pad Thai. It tasted as bland as plain cardboard. I watched her speak, her face animated, as she recounted the exploits of an irritating client from lunch, the uninspired delivery of a speaker with an peculiar accent, and a presentation filled with visuals that appeared to be from the early 2006s. She was convincing, her performance seamless, almost believable. But midway through her fabricated account, I interjected, maintaining a deliberately casual, almost dismissive tone. "What's the Elmswood like?" She blinked. Just once, but it was noticeable. A slight, involuntary widening of her eyes. Her practiced smile wavered for a fraction of a second before snapping back into place. "Huh, the Elmswood." "Yeah," I continued, leaning back slightly, feigning indifference. "I noticed a crumpled receipt in your car's cup holder earlier. It looked like it was from a coffee shop there, the Elmswood Cafe or something." I fabricated the detail smoothly. There was no receipt. Oh, that," she said, recovering swiftly, dismissing it with a wave of her hand. "Yes, we stopped there after the seminar for a quick coffee before heading back. Dreadful coffee, actually. I think the name was just on the napkin, maybe. Tossed it, though." Her response was swift, confident, almost perfect, but not entirely, for her gaze had flickered away for a mere fraction of a second, and the faint blush creeping up her neck betrayed her. Dana had lost sight of who I truly was. She perceived the accommodating spouse, the predictable partner, the docile pet. She hadn't yet grasped that the quiet, observant man seated before her, calmly consuming noodles, possessed sharp teeth, and was not hesitant to employ them. The game was far from over. It was merely entering its final, brutal act. The evening after I witnessed Dana exiting the Elmswood Hotel with Mark Lindley, something fundamental within me didn't just shift, it fractured and fell away. Standing before the bathroom mirror late that night, meticulously brushing my teeth, I scrutinized my reflection intently. The face gazing back was familiar, yet my eyes held a different luminescence, colder, harder. For 12 years, Dana had subtly, persistently reinforced a particular narrative. I was too gentle, too accommodating, too averse to conflict, too passive. I had mistaken these traits for the quiet strength of love, the kind that maintains composure, listens, compromises, and endures. Looking into my own eyes that night, I no longer saw a man inclined toward compromise. I saw a man being forged in the corrosive crucible of betrayal, his resolve sharpening in absolute silence. The subsequent day, Wednesday, I called in sick to work, citing a sudden severe migraine. I needed time not for weeping, nor for anger, nor for self-pity, but for meticulous planning and strategic thinking. I spread out all the gathered materials across the dining room table. The room was bathed in the morning sunlight, which felt almost sacrilegious against the somber weight of the evidence. Texts, GPS logs with damning timestamps, video footage from the car camera capturing their furtive gestures and hushed conversations, audio recordings from the bathroom vanity area, documenting her side of hushed phone calls, confirming rendezvous locations, crystal-clear photographs of them embracing outside the Elmswood, phone records detailing hundreds of calls and messages exchanged between her and Mark Lindley, printouts of her personal credit card statements revealing charges for accommodations and gifts that were entirely unknown to me. This was no longer a matter of mere suspicion. It was a meticulously constructed campaign of deception. Mark Lindley, my former superior, the man I had regarded as a friend, had not simply stumbled into an affair. He had systematically, almost parasitically infiltrated my marriage. But the truly devastating betrayal was not solely his actions, it was Dana's. She had not been coerced or seduced. She had repeatedly, willingly, and eagerly granted him access. Then, as I contemplated the timeline laid out before me, another, colder realization began to surface. This was not merely about carnal intimacy. It was a prolonged, calculated deception, encompassing financial, emotional, and sexual dimensions. And worse, she was actively preparing for an exit. Those spa packages were not spontaneous indulgences. They were part of constructing a new life, perhaps even testing the waters of a future with him. Her recent, seemingly innocuous inquiries echoed in my mind with a chilling, new significance. Have you ever considered simplifying our lives? Perhaps relocating somewhere warmer? Or what would you do if you had a completely fresh start, Jack? Hypothetically, these were not innocent musings, but rather trial balloons, soft launches for a future meticulously planned, a future from which I was being surgically removed. Consequently, I began to strategize, thinking several steps ahead. I drove to our bank. I requested printouts of all joint account statements for the preceding 2 years. Then, quietly and efficiently, I opened a new private checking and savings account solely in my name at a different financial institution. I initiated an online transfer, moving precisely 50% of our liquid assets, checking, savings, and money market funds, into my newly established accounts. This was not illegal. It was marital property, and I claimed exactly half. I did not touch the home equity, retirement funds, or long-term investments, only the readily accessible cash. It was enough to inflict a significant blow, enough to cause her considerable discomfort upon discovery, but not so much, perhaps, as to provoke an immediate, overt confrontation, merely enough to undermine her sense of security. I also scheduled another consultation with our divorce attorney, Allison Grant, a sharp, pragmatic, no-nonsense professional. "Okay," she said, after reviewing the new evidence I had emailed her, including the photographs and financial discrepancies. "The infidelity is now irrefutable, Jack. Coupled with the clear financial misrepresentation involving marital assets, even indirectly through her personal card for the affair, you possess significant leverage. We can pursue a very favorable settlement." She paused, her gaze piercing. "But my advice remains the same for now. Do not make a move yet. Do not reveal your hand. Allow her to continue believing she is in control. Let her dig herself a little deeper." The phrase resonated, embedding itself in my mind like a dark incantation. Patience, strategy, control. And so I waited and observed. Dana, seemingly emboldened by her successful escapade, grew more audacious, her late nights with colleagues becoming more frequent. Her phone, once casually left on the counter, was now perpetually locked, angled away from me whenever she used it. She would giggle at messages she didn't share and take calls while retreating to another room, closing the door behind her. Simultaneously, her subtle criticisms escalated into more overt remarks, comments about how I seemed distant lately, how I never initiated anything enjoyable anymore, how she felt we were drifting apart, all delivered with a sigh that barely masked her satisfaction. I played my part flawlessly. I agreed with her every assertion. "Yes, perhaps you're right," I remarked once during a quiet dinner, simply to observe her reaction. "Things do feel different." She met my gaze, a fleeting, unreadable expression in her eyes, surprise, perhaps guilt. But then she smiled, a small, tight smile, as if I were making it easy for her, as if the puppy were finally learning to roll over on command. A few evenings later, I was engrossed in a book in the living room when I observed her quietly slipping out of our bedroom, her phone pressed to her ear, whispering. I put my book down silently and followed, barefoot, maintaining a position just outside her line of sight in the dim hallway. She entered the guest room, closing the door almost entirely, but not quite latching it. The tiny microphone that Kevin had helped me install weeks prior, cleverly disguised within a smoke detector in the hallway ceiling fixture, captured her words with perfect clarity. "Told you he won't fight back," she was saying, her voice low but assured. "He's just not built that way, Mark. Never has been." A pause, then a soft, cruel laugh. "He's like an old, comfortable dog. Loyal, predictable, harmless. If I leave, he'll just roll over and let go. Probably thank me for setting him free." I stood frozen in the hallway, listening to the playback later on my laptop, the waveform pulsing on the screen. An old dog, roll over, let go. That was it. That was the entirety of how she perceived me after 12 years. Comfortable, disposable, predictable. But my role in this narrative was not yet concluded. Later that night, long after she had fallen into a deep, untroubled sleep, a sleep I hadn't experienced in weeks, I crept back into the guest room. Her purse lay on the armchair where she had tossed it. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands remained steady. She had never changed her phone passcode. It had been the same 4 digits since college, 1284. Her birth month and year, predictable. I unlocked her phone, the screen casting a faint blue glow in the darkness. I navigated to her notes application, and there it was, a drafted message, unsent, addressed to Mark. Subject, us. "If I actually do this, if I move in with you after everything's settled, will your kids hate me?" I keep trying to imagine what it would really be like. Starting fresh, just us, no baggage. God, I think I'm finally ready, Mark. Really ready. Ready to be free of this life. I stared at the words glowing in the dark for a full minute. Free of this life. My life. Our life. She wasn't merely engaging in infidelity. She was actively orchestrating her escape, rehearsing the breakup, envisioning a future constructed upon the wreckage of our marriage. She had already abandoned me in mind, body, and soul. She had no inkling that I, too, was rehearsing. But my performance would not be about evasion. It would be about confrontation, about control, about demonstrating to her precisely whom she had underestimated. I would not scream, I would not plead, I would not vanish quietly. No, I would lead her to believe that everything remained perfectly, mundanely normal, right up until the precise moment I brought the entire structure crashing down upon her. Dana believed she was dealing with a predictable old dog. She had no idea she had awakened something entirely different, something far less forgiving. The ensuing week felt like navigating a minefield blindfolded. Every conversation, every shared meal, every casual touch was fraught with the tension of unspoken truths. Dana appeared oblivious, cocooned within her secret life, occasionally bestowing upon me perfunctory smiles or feigned interest in my day. She believed she was managing the situation, gently guiding us toward the inevitable, gentle separation she envisioned. She thought I was quietly fading away. She could not have been more mistaken. I was not fading. I was consolidating power, preparing the battlefield. The opportunity presented itself sooner than I anticipated. On Thursday, she announced a need to visit her ailing aunt upstate. "She's taken a bit of a turn," Dana explained, her expression a mask of dutiful concern. "I should probably stay overnight, maybe 2 nights, just to help out." I knew instantly it was a fabrication. Her Aunt Clara resided 2 states away and was, according to her sister, whom I had discreetly contacted earlier that week, in excellent health. A swift review of the tracker data from the previous week revealed a ping at Mark Lindley's secluded lake house, a property he retained after his divorce, located 2 hours to the north, nestled deep within the woods, offering perfect privacy. That had to be her intended destination. "Of course, honey," I replied, my voice gentle and supportive. "Family comes first. Don't worry about anything here. Just focus on Aunt Clara." A wave of relief washed over her face as she smiled. "Thanks, Jack. You're the best." She packed an overnight bag, not with sensible clothing for assisting an elderly relative, but with lingerie I hadn't seen in years, and that black satin dress. She departed Friday morning, bestowing upon me a kiss goodbye with theatrical tenderness. "I'll call you tonight," she promised. The instant her car disappeared around the corner, my own plan shifted into high gear. This was not about gathering further evidence. It was about setting the stage. I dedicated Friday to finalizing my preparations. I retrieved the substantial locked case from the rear of my closet. Inside, nestled within custom foam padding, was the .44 Magnum revolver my grandfather, a former state trooper, had bequeathed to me. Polished blue steel, walnut grips, a formidable weight in the hand. I hadn't fired it in years, but I knew its operation intimately. I checked the cylinder. It was empty. I located the box of ammunition, heavy brass cartridges, and loaded 6 rounds, feeling the solid click as each one seated. The weight of the loaded firearm felt definitive. I also gathered the other items. A pair of sturdy police-grade handcuffs I had ordered online weeks prior, a coil of thick nylon rope, 2 black canvas hoods, the type used for sensory deprivation, duct tape, and a small powerful flashlight. I placed everything into an unremarkable duffel bag. Saturday passed in a blur of tense anticipation. Dana sent sporadic texts. Clara resting, made her soup, so tired. Each lie twisted the knife a little deeper. I responded with bland solicitousness. Around 7 in the evening on Saturday, my phone buzzed. It wasn't from Dana. It was the notification from the discreet motion-activated security camera I had installed near the back patio door, hidden within a birdhouse. "Motion detected. Back patio zone." My heart gave a single, hard jolt. He was here. Mark Lindley was here in my house. While Dana was supposedly 2 states away tending to a sick aunt, the sheer, unmitigated arrogance of it stole my breath. Had Dana given him a key or told him where the spare was hidden? It mattered little. They felt secure, untouchable. They presumed me to be the absent, clueless husband hundreds of miles away. I was sitting in my car, parked at a small park just 10 blocks distant, waiting, observing the live feed from the internal cameras Kevin had helped me set up. Small wireless units disguised as smoke detectors and air fresheners, transmitting encrypted video to my laptop. I watched Mark let himself in through the rear sliding door, brazenly. He appeared casual, relaxed, carrying a bottle of wine. He poured himself a glass using one of my whiskey tumblers and wandered into the living room, surveying it as if he owned the place. Then, unbelievably, I saw Dana emerge from the hallway leading from the master bedroom. She wasn't upstate. She had never left, or she had returned early, planning this rendezvous. She was wearing a silky robe, her hair unbound. She walked up to Mark, a sultry smile gracing her lips, took the wine glass from his hand, sipped from it, and then pulled him close, whispering something into his ear. He laughed, placing the wine bottle down on my coffee table, and kissed her neck. She laughed again, a low, intimate sound that sent a chill through me, and began leading him toward the stairs, presumably to our bedroom. My bedroom. That was it. The final violation, the point of no return. I switched off the engine, retrieved the duffel bag from the passenger seat, and exited the car. My movements felt unnaturally calm, deliberate. Each step crunched softly on the gravel path leading away from the park. The cool night air felt electric against my skin. There was no rage clouding my vision, no trembling in my hands, only a chilling clarity, a sense of purpose. I let myself in through the front door using my key, silently. The soft strains of some forgettable pop song drifted from the living room speakers. They probably wouldn't even hear me over the music and their own laughter. I walked into the living room. The scene froze, as if hitting pause on a movie. Mark was halfway up the stairs. Dana, a step below him, her hand resting possessively on his hip. They both turned at the faint sound of my footsteps on the hardwood floor. Mark's smug expression evaporated instantly, replaced by wide-eyed, slack-jawed panic. He looked like a cornered rat. Dana's face cycled through emotions with lightning speed, confusion. What are you doing here? Then dawning horror, followed by a flicker of desperate calculation as her mind scrambled for an excuse, a way to spin this. "Jack," she gasped, snatching her hand away from Mark as if burned, taking a shaky step back down. You're back early. I thought—" "I live here, Dana," I stated, my voice quiet, devoid of inflection. It seemed to echo in the suddenly cavernous silence of the room. The music still played softly, a grotesque counterpoint to the tableau. "Or had you forgotten?" Mark began stammering, backing slowly down the stairs, his hands raised slightly as if warding off a blow. "Look, man, Jack, it's not what it looks like." "Isn't it?" I interrupted, my gaze fixed on him. I slowly reached into the duffel bag I still held. The weight of the magnum felt solid, grounding. I pulled it out. The polished steel gleamed dully in the lamplight. Dana gasped, a hand flying to her mouth. Mark froze completely, his face draining of all color, his eyes locked on the weapon. "Get down here, Mark," I commanded, my voice still unnervingly calm. "Both of you, living room now." They stumbled down the remaining stairs, clumsy with fear. Mark tripped on the bottom step, catching himself on the railing. Dana moved like a marionette whose strings had been cut, her silky robe gaping slightly. "Jack, please," Dana whispered, tears finally starting to well in her eyes. "Listen," I snapped, the command sharp, cutting through her plea. I gestured with the barrel of the magnum towards the center of the room. "Stand there, together." They shuffled closer. Mark, visibly trembling, Dana hugging her arms around herself. "So," I began, walking slowly towards them, the heavy firearm held steady, pointed towards the floor for now. "This is him, Dana. This is the upgrade, the wolf." I let my gaze drift contemptuously over Mark, from his expensive loafers, hastily put back on, I noticed, to his terrified face. Then, with deliberate, shocking precision, I raised the magnum, aiming it directly, unwaveringly at Mark Lindley's lap. Mark let out a strangled whimper, his eyes bulging. He instinctively tried to cover himself, but I barked, "Hands where I can see them now." He froze again, hands hovering uselessly at his sides, sweat beading on his forehead. Dana cried out, "Jack, no, don't." "Shut up, Dana," I said without looking at her, my focus entirely on the terrified man in front of me. "Let's talk about this, Mark. Let's talk about value." My voice was low, conversational, almost detached, which somehow made it more terrifying. "My wife," I gestured vaguely towards Dana with my free hand, "seems to think I'm lacking a puppy. She called me predictable, safe, boring." I took a step closer, the muzzle of the magnum now just inches from his expensive jeans. "And you? You're the alternative." I let out a short, harsh laugh. "Seriously? You traded 12 years, a home, a life for this?" I sneered, nodding towards his groin. "This flabby, middle-aged, terrified piece of crap? This is what you risked everything for?" Mark was shaking uncontrollably now, tears streaming down his face. "Please, man." "I'm sorry. We didn't mean—" "I didn't mean," I repeated, pressing the cold metal of the firearm slightly against the denim of his trousers. He recoiled sharply. "You meant every single message, every falsehood, every time you infiltrated my home, my personal space. Spare me these flimsy pretexts." I drew closer, my voice deepening to a dangerous murmur. "You are pathetic, Mark. A complete failure, clinging to the lives of others because your own is utterly devoid of substance. And you know what? Today marks your final day of self-satisfaction." I subtly adjusted my aim, directing the barrel towards his feet. "Remember what Dana labeled me, Mark? A mere pet?" A smile stretched across my face, a grim, cruel distortion. "Little creatures bounce when they're content, don't they? Bounce, Mark. Bounce with joy, like a tiny, happy companion for me." "What?" he stammered, a mixture of confusion and abject fear clouding his expression. I reiterated, my voice a thunderous roar that filled the suffocating silence of the room. I fired the weapon. The sound was deafening, a violent shockwave. Fine dust rained down from the ceiling, dislodged by the bullet's impact on the wall above the hearth, thankfully harmless. Dana shrieked, covering her ears. Mark yelped and sprang into the air, a contorted, panicked spasm. "Once more," I commanded, keeping the firearm steady on him. He jumped again, clumsily, his face streaming with tears and snot. "A good pet. See, Dana, he's a quick learner." I retrieved my mobile device from my pocket with my free hand, my thumb already initiating the recording function. "All right, Mark, time for your confession." I raised the phone, capturing his tear-streaked, terrified visage. "Recount every detail. Tell me the duration of this affair. Detail where you first encountered each other. Explain everything about the Elmswood estate. Describe your experiences at the lake house. Spill it all." I increased the pressure of the barrel against his thigh. "How did you gain entry into my residence this evening? Speak now." Sobbing uncontrollably, choking on his words, Mark divulged everything. A torrent of pathetic admissions, specific dates, locations, meticulously sorted details, interspersed with desperate pleas for absolution. I documented it all, my expression utterly unreadable. When he finally concluded, drained and broken, I did not cease the recording. An exemplary subject. Now for our main participant. I angled the phone slightly towards Dana, who stood frozen, silent tears carving tracks through her makeup. Then, with my thumb, I navigated the screen, tapping the FaceTime icon adjacent to her contact photo. Her own mobile device resting on the coffee table began to chime. The cheerful, default ringtone sounded disturbingly out of place in the profound quiet. "Answer it, Dana," I instructed softly. She stared at me, uncomprehending. "Answer your device." Her hand, trembling uncontrollably, she fumbled for the phone, her thumb swiping clumsily across the display. Her own face materialized on my phone screen via FaceTime, pale and utterly terrified. "Now, Mark," I declared, shifting my phone so the camera encompassed both his expression and Dana's reaction within the small screen within a screen. Tell her precisely what you just confessed to me. Convey to your paramour the depth of your current emotions. Acknowledge the magnitude of your error. Do it." Glancing from the firearm to Dana's horrified countenance on the screen, Mark began to stammer anew, confessing his dread, his remorse, imploring her, begging me to simply release him. Dana watched, silent, her face crumbling as the live broadcast of his confession unfolded, transmitted directly from her own living room. Once he was finished, I terminated the call and returned my phone to my pocket. "Now," I stated, directing my full attention to Dana. I reached into the duffel bag and produced the restraints and the coil of cord. I tossed them onto the floor at her feet, retrieved them. She gazed at the items, then back at me, her eyes wide with incredulity and terror. "Jack, what are you doing? You heard me. Pick them up." My voice was glacial. Her eyes, she would later recount, appeared almost crimson, blazing with a rage that had finally erupted from behind its placid veneer. "You desired him. You have him. Now secure your prize." Hesitantly, compelled by sheer terror, she stooped, her hands shaking so violently she could barely grasp the cold metal and the coarse rope. "Apply the restraints to him," I commanded, indicating Mark, who stood slumped, weeping silently. Behind his back, secured tightly. Sobbing softly, Dana fumbled with the cuffs, fastening them onto Mark's wrists behind him. He offered no resistance, simply standing there, utterly defeated. "The cord, now," I continued, my voice unyielding. "Secure his ankles firmly. You are proficient with knots, Dana. You were a Girl Scout." Her fingers trembling, she looped the cord around his ankles, tightening a clumsy but secure knot. Mark was effectively hobbled, standing precariously in the center of my living room. "Excellent," I pronounced, nodding slowly. I approached Dana. She flinched as I drew near, but I merely reached out and relieved her of the remaining cord. She appeared utterly depleted, exhausted, her body slumping. "You appear fatigued, Dana." Before she could react, I moved with swiftness, wrapping the cord around her wrists, binding them securely in front of her. She gasped, but offered no resistance. Then I extracted a strip of duct tape from the bag and affixed it firmly across her mouth, muffling her choked cry. Her eyes widened above the tape, frantic with apprehension. "Now," I announced, retrieving the 2 dark canvas hoods from the bag. "Heads down." I pulled one hood over Mark's head, plunging him into darkness. He whimpered. Then I performed the same action on Dana, silencing her muffled protests, enveloping her in suffocating blackness. "All right, little ones," I stated, my voice regaining its chilling composure. "Time for a promenade." I nudged Mark forward with the firearm's barrel. "Proceed toward the rear entrance, slowly. You first." Blind and bound, Mark stumbled forward, colliding with furnishings. Dana followed hesitantly, guided by my hand on her back. Into the garage, I directed, opening the connecting door. I urged Mark towards the open compartment of my vehicle, the rental sedan still parked outside, which I had discreetly swapped for my own car within the garage earlier. Enter. He hesitated, whimpering. Enter now. He practically tumbled into the trunk's confines. I turned to Dana. You two lie down, remain still. Trembling uncontrollably, she complied, curling into a ball beside Mark in the confined darkness. I looked down at them. Two pathetic, bound figures in the gloom of the trunk. Listen carefully, I intoned, my voice low and deadly serious. If you make even a single sound, a solitary noise during this journey, I will pull over and eliminate you both then and there by the roadside. Do you comprehend? Remain absolutely silent, or you will perish. I slammed the trunk lid shut, the sound resonating in the sudden quiet of the garage. I inhaled deeply, the adrenaline finally beginning to subside, replaced by a cold, lucid focus. The night was far from its conclusion. The drive and the woods. The drive was conducted in absolute silence, save for the low thrum of the engine and the occasional grinding of tires on gravel as I navigated the darkened, serpentine roadways leading away from the city. In the rearview mirror, my eyes appeared alien, hard, vacant, reflecting the streetlights like fragments of obsidian. Within the trunk, I envisioned Dana and Mark, blindfolded, bound, huddled together in abject terror. Were they exchanging hushed words, weeping silently, or simply paralyzed by fear, adhering to my command? It held no consequence. The balance of power had irrevocably shifted. I was the predator now. I proceeded northward towards the vicinity where Mark's lake house was situated, but bypassed it, venturing deeper into the state forest preserves, onto logging trails that grew progressively more arduous. The GPS on my phone, mounted on the dashboard, indicated my increasing distance from civilization. My objective was a secluded clearing known to me from years past. A location I had stumbled upon during a solitary camping excursion, miles from any main thoroughfare, accessible only by a barely discernible dirt track. Perfect isolation. Approximately 30 miles out, flashing azure and crimson lights suddenly illuminated my rearview mirror. My heart lurched into my throat. A police patrol car. Calamity. Had someone overheard the discharge? Witnessed my compelling them into the vehicle? Reported the rental car. I checked my velocity. I was not exceeding the speed limit. I eased to a halt smoothly on the gravel verge, the engine idling. I observed the officer's approach in my side mirror, his silhouette backlit by the headlights. I drew a calming breath, composing my features into an expression of mild irritation. The picture of a slightly inconvenienced citizen. The officer, young, with a stern countenance, rapped on the window. I lowered it halfway. "License and registration, if you please," he stated, his voice polite yet firm. A flashlight beam swept across the car's interior, thankfully missing the duffel bag on the passenger floor. "Is there a problem, officer?" I inquired, retrieving the rental agreement and my driver's license from the glove compartment, my hands perfectly steady. "Your right tail light is malfunctioning, sir," he informed me, accepting the documents. "I need to address that." He shone his light briefly towards the rear of the vehicle. Could he detect any sound? A muffled sob, a frantic rustle. The trunk felt miles away, yet terrifyingly close. "A wretched rental," I muttered, feigning exasperation. "I just acquired it today. Figures. Thank you for bringing it to my attention, officer. I will report it." He returned to his patrol car, presumably to process my license and the rental vehicle's plates. The delay felt interminable. Every rustle of leaves outside, every distant insect's drone seemed amplified. My palms grew slick with perspiration. What if he requested I exit the vehicle? What if he grew suspicious? What if he asked to inspect the trunk? My hand instinctively tightened on the steering wheel. The firearm remained in the duffel bag within reach, but employing it now would be self-destructive. Just as the officer began his return towards my car, his radio crackled to life, loud and urgent. All units, Code 3 response required. Reported multi-vehicle collision with entrapment. Highway 9, mile marker 47. The officer paused, listened intently, then spoke rapidly into his shoulder microphone. He turned back to me, handing my documents through the window. "All right, sir. It appears you are clear. Kindly ensure that tail light is repaired at your earliest convenience. Drive safely." He offered me scarcely more than a cursory glance, his thoughts clearly already preoccupied with the more pressing emergency. He strode rapidly back to his patrol car, its lights still flashing, and departed swiftly, the siren beginning to wail as he vanished down the highway. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The tension dissipated, leaving me shaky but resolved. Foolish fortune, or perhaps something more. I rejoined the roadway, my heart still pounding, and continued my journey into the encroaching darkness, deeper into the woods. Another 20 minutes down increasingly overgrown tracks, I finally reached the clearing. Towering pines encircled it on all sides, their branches obscuring the stars. The air was cool, moist, carrying the scent of pine needles and sodden earth. Absolute silence, punctuated only by the chirping of crickets. I deactivated the engine and the headlights, plunging the clearing into near-complete obscurity, save for the faint moonlight filtering through the arboreal canopy. I exited the vehicle, retrieved the powerful flashlight and 2 shovels from the duffel bag, then unlatched the trunk. Dana and Mark flinched at the sudden intrusion of light and sound. They appeared disoriented, pathetic. "Exit," I commanded slowly. I guided them out, unsteady on their bound ankles. I removed the hoods. Their eyes blinked rapidly, adjusting to the flashlight beam I kept fixed upon them. Fear, raw and primal, was etched onto their faces. Mark appeared utterly defeated. Dana's face was streaked with tears beneath the duct tape. I tore the tape from her mouth. She gasped, drawing in deep drafts of air, whimpering. "What? What are you going to do, Jack?" she choked out, her voice raspy. I ignored her, pressing a shovel into Mark's bound hands, then into Dana's. "Dig," I commanded, gesturing to a patch of yielding earth beneath the largest pine tree. "Dig," Mark stammered, glancing down at the shovel, then back at me in horror. "Dig what? Your grave?" I replied flatly. "Both of you commence digging. Ensure it is sufficiently deep." Dana let out a strangled sob, collapsing to her knees. "No, Jack, please do not do this. Please, I am so sorry. I am profoundly sorry." Mark began to weep openly, with thick, gulping sobs. "Please, man, forgive me. Do not eliminate us. We will do anything. We will disappear. You will never see us again." "Please," I commanded. "Dig," I barked, amplifying my voice, the sound cracking through the silent woods. I shone the flashlight beam directly into their eyes, then onto the spot I had indicated. "Or I will do it for you, right here, right now." Terror overwhelmed their paralysis. Fumbling awkwardly with their bound hands and ankles, hindered by the unfamiliar weight of the shovels, they began to dig. The task was slow, agonizing. The damp earth resisted. They tripped, stumbled, sobbed, their movements jerky and inefficient. Dana cried incessantly, quiet, hopeless tears. Mark alternated between frantic begging and whimpering prayers. I remained at a distance, observing them, the flashlight beam steady, my expression unreadable. The cold night air stung my cheeks. The only sounds were their ragged breaths, the scrape and thud of the shovels impacting dirt and roots, and their pathetic weeping. An hour elapsed, perhaps more. The excavation grew slowly, agonizingly, transforming into a shallow, ragged trench in the earth. They were exhausted, coated in dirt and sweat despite the cool air. Finally, when the hole reached a depth of approximately 3 feet, spanning perhaps 6 feet in length, I raised a hand. Enough. They ceased, leaning heavily on the shovels, their chests heaving, looking up at me with eyes brimming with exhaustion and pure terror. They clearly believed this to be their end. I walked slowly towards the edge of the shallow excavation they had created. I gazed down into it, then back at them. They huddled together, shivering. "Well," I commenced, my voice adopting a somber, almost funereal tone. "It appears we have reached the conclusion of our journey, a tragic end brought about by treachery, deceit, feebleness." I shifted my gaze from Dana's tear-ravaged face to Mark's utterly broken one. In moments such as these, tradition dictates contemplation, a final thought, a last appeal. I paused, allowing the silence to stretch, thick with dread. Like a cleric bestowing final rites, I present you with this singular, ultimate opportunity. Make your peace. Seek absolution, not from me, I added swiftly, my voice hardening. My mercy expired miles ago. Seek it from whatever deity you may or may not hold belief in. You have 1 minute. Dana squeezed her eyes shut, murmuring incoherent prayers through trembling lips. Mark simply stared at me, his face a mask of hopeless despair. The minute elapsed in agonizing silence, punctuated solely by the frantic chirping of crickets. When the allotted time expired, I raised the magnum, cocking the hammer with a loud, definitive click that echoed in the stillness. Dana flinched violently, emitting a sharp cry. Mark closed his eyes, bracing for the impact. "Farewell," I whispered, and then I fired. The shot exploded through the night, a deafening roar followed by a crackling echo that ricocheted off the trees. Birds startled from nearby branches, flapping frantically into the darkness. Dana screamed, collapsing fully onto the ground, convinced Mark had been shot, or perhaps herself. Mark crumpled beside her, shaking like a leaf, awaiting the pain that never materialized. I lowered the firearm. Smoke curled faintly from the barrel, illuminated by the flashlight beam. I had not aimed at them. I had discharged the round directly upwards into the empty air. I began to laugh, not a mirthful laugh. A cold, harsh, grating sound that held no humor, only chilling contempt. "Get up," I commanded. They stared at me, bewildered, hope warring with terror in their eyes. "Get the hell up." Slowly, shakily, they helped each other to their feet. Did you truly believe?" I chuckled again, shaking my head. "Did you truly imagine I would squander a projectile? Waste the effort of digging a genuine grave for refuse such as yourselves?" I spat the words out. "Eliminate you? No, that is far too convenient, too swift." I surveyed them from head to toe, taking in their dirt-streaked faces, their bound extremities, their utter degradation. It was a jest. "Puppies," I declared, the word dripping with venom. "A lesson. I do not eliminate simpletons like you. It is not worth a prison sentence." I took a step closer, my voice descending once more to that low, menacing register. "But listen to me with extreme care. You will depart these woods tonight. You will find your way back, and you will never, ever speak of this to anyone. Not to the authorities, not to legal counsel, not to your companions, not to your damned therapists. I held up my phone, displaying the recording of Mark's confession, the timestamp clearly visible. Because I possess everything. The confession, the photographs, the videos, evidence of your pathetic little indiscretion, Mark, and evidence of your unauthorized entry this evening. And Dana, I turned to her, evidence of your complicity, your fabrications. If I so much as hear a whisper of tonight's occurrences, I continued, if any official capacity ever contacts me, I will disseminate everything. To the law enforcement agencies, yes, but also publicly. To your employers, to Mark's former spouse and children, to Dana's family, to everyone. I will systematically dismantle what remains of your pitiful existences, piece by piece. I will devastate you financially, socially, professionally. Is that understood? They both nodded frantically, their eyes wide with renewed fear. A different kind of fear now, not of demise, but of complete exposure and ruin. Good. I stepped back, holstering the firearm inside my jacket. I tossed a small pocket knife onto the ground near Mark's feet. Utilize that to free yourselves. Eventually, I turned without another word, walked back to the rental car, entered it, and started the engine. The headlights flared to life, illuminating the two miserable figures huddled beside the shallow mockery of a grave. They appeared diminutive, lost, utterly broken in the vast, indifferent darkness of the woods. I engaged the reverse gear, backed out of the clearing, and drove away, abandoning them there alone, bound, 40 miles from the nearest settlement in the dead of night, with nothing but a pocket knife, the clothes on their backs, and the crushing burden of their humiliation and dread. I did not look back. Aftermath. It took them nearly 6 hours to extricate themselves and locate assistance. Dawn was breaking when a logging truck driver discovered Dana and Mark stumbling along the shoulder of a remote highway, utterly spent, scratched, and incoherent. They claimed to have been victims of a carjacking and subsequently abandoned, adhering to a flimsy narrative that faltered under minimal scrutiny. However, lacking any concrete evidence of an alternative perpetrator, and thoroughly intimidated by Jack's threats, they refused to implicate him directly. The police report noted discrepancies but ultimately classified the case as unsolved. The divorce proceedings were acrimonious, yet swift. Jack's attorney, Allison Grant, presented irrefutable proof of infidelity and financial malfeasance privately to Dana's counsel. Facing complete exposure and Jack's cold assurance of ruin, Dana acquiesced to a settlement heavily skewed in Jack's favor, relinquishing her claims to the residence and substantial assets. She vacated the premises, broken and ostracized. Mark Lindley's wife, already harboring suspicions, enlisted her own investigator upon hearing rumors. Presented with damning evidence Jack indirectly ensured she received, she initiated divorce proceedings immediately, citing infidelity. Mark lost his employment shortly thereafter, his reputation in tatters. They never pursued legal action. They never publicly discussed that night in the woods. The threat and the trauma enforced their silence. Jack, having exacted his due, and then some, simply vanished, leaving behind the wreckage.